Yeah, so till now we have calculated, GDP or national income in three different ways: income, expenditure, and product method. This is just a crude method. I have not ventured into GDP, nor I have ventured into national income. As of now, I just said both are equal, and we just, through the circular flow of income, we just calculate it through three methods. So that is like the seed number one, which we will be reaping later while defining GDP. The next seed is also another basic, which we will be covering now, which will be helpful for you to understand the formulas later. Okay, later means before this lecture ends. Okay, so the basic is, first thing what we are going to look is, we are going to find the difference between domestic and national, sir. So what does domestic or national mean in India? For example, GDP. GDP is nothing but gross domestic product. GNP. GNP is nothing but gross national product. So what is domestic and what is national? You need to have a clear picture, sir. So very simple. Domestic means, name itself saying it is domestic. Domestic means what? Within the boundary, within the country's boundary, whatever is production is happening, that is domestic, sir. Okay. National means what? What are the citizens of India, they are producing? They can be either living in India or they can be living abroad. What are they producing, sir? So that will come in national. So that means you need to see in this chapter, after having this understanding, you need to be comfortable. You need to be moving between formulas comfortably. So that is our objective. So that means, how will we move from domestic to national? So that will be the next step, sir. So first thing, so I am like having a domestic income or domestic GDP. So I know this so let's take the example of GDP itself. I'm having a gross domestic product. I want to move to gross national product, sir. So what will happen? So that means domestic, so from domestic, what should I add and what should I remove? We already know domestic means, like, already there are some NRIs. For example, IT sector employee who is in foreign country, who is earning, he will be sending back some remittance, sir, or receipt. Similarly, in Middle East, there are people over there, they will be sending back remittance. So that means from domestic, we have to add the remittance which will come, sir. Here if you look at this thing, Indian in foreign country, he will be sending back what? Your remittance to India. So that means to domestic you need to add remittance, sir. So this is the first step to move towards national, sir. Next important thing, what should we subtract? So definitely we are adding something, but at the same time, within India there are some foreigners who are earning, no? There will be a consultant, or there will be some people who are coming and advising, so some researchers, scholars, etc. So they will be earning something. So they will be sending their payment, like their salary outside. This is called as payment. So essentially, foreigner in India will be giving currency outside. So that means currency will be flowing outside. So that means that has to be removed, sir, before going to national. So D plus R minus P is equal to N, sir. So what is this R minus P? That is what we are going to see. We are now seeing the conversion from domestic to national. So simply, if you want to do a GDP to GNP, all you have to do is GDP plus remittance minus payments will give you your GNP. So that is a simple, way of saying it. So from domestic to national, you got how to move. So next thing is, we have to define what is this remittance minus payments. This is nothing but called as net factor income from abroad. Okay, so I have already said what is net. Net means you will deduct something. So that means what? Whatever is coming in, and I am deducting whatever is going out, and I am just saying, and net factor income. Factor I have already said, 4 factors. Factor income means what is the factors of production? Earnings, sir. So net factor income from abroad. That means what? How much are we getting from abroad? Net we are doing. So we are getting payments, we are getting remittance from abroad, but we have to do the net. That means what? We are paying. So we will subtract that thing. So this R minus P is nothing but net factor income from abroad. NFIA it will be called as, or it can be also called as net income from abroad. NIFA, whatever it is. So essentially your formula will come out to be domestic plus NIFA is equal to national, sir. This NIFA is nothing but R minus P, sir. So this is the first conversion we have to understand and take into our mind, because later it will be very useful. So second conversion we will be looking at is how to move between gross and net, sir. So I have already said gross. Gross means without deducting anything. So you won't be deducting anything. On the whole, you will take it. Net means you will be deducting something. So essentially, that means what? From gross to net, if you are moving, you have to deduct something. So what are we going to deduct? So that deduction is depreciation over here. I will explain depreciation, then we will come back to formula. See, to understand depreciation, I will take an example over here. I am teaching, okay, so this is a service I am providing. Let's say that 10 people are watching, for example, and they are paying 10 rupees fees. So essentially I am earning 100 rupees out of this service. But to do this earning 100 rupees, I need this TV or computer, sir. So that means, let's say for a fact this will last only for 1 year. So if I have to keep earning this 100 rupees for this year and next year and next year, I need to buy a TV like this every year, sir. So I need to buy a TV like this every year, because this life is 1 year. So essentially, to keep myself earning, so to maintain that income level, or to maintain that GDP level, or to maintain that this level of depreciation is needed. This essentially depreciation is nothing but wear and tear, or in other words, if you can put it, it is the essential capital. So this thing is nothing but capital, because it is helping you to produce some output. Essential capital needed to sustain the output, sir. I have to maintain. So that is called as depreciation, sir. So that means from when you move from gross to net, or simple example is from GDP, gross domestic product, to NDP, net domestic product, sir. So what am I doing? So gross domestic product encompasses everything, even depreciation. Okay, so like even the replacement, like for the depreciation of this TV also it will encompass. But net domestic product will do what? I will not take this thing and all, because this was essentially this was essentially there last year. You are just replacing it. Rather, the net domestic product will look for what is new being produced. So that means we have to remove the wear and tear. So that means from GDP to NDP, that is from gross to net, if you are moving, G minus depreciation will give me net. Okay, so that is what. So that means what? From GDP to NDP, if I have to move, all I have to do is minus my depreciation. So this is the next understanding, sir. So after that, the third thing we are moving is market price versus factor cost. I have already explained you what is factor income and factor cost. In the circular flow of income, what we have seen. So essentially factor means factors of production. There are 4 factors of production: land, labor, and capital, and entrepreneurship. Okay, so they will be getting from the household side, if you look, you will be getting factor income. But from the business side, if you look, that is essentially nothing but factor cost, because they will be paying out, so it's a factor cost. For the household, they will be getting this factor income, because they are giving this thing, they are essentially from household, they are getting labor, so you will be getting back wage. So from household side, if you look, that is factor income. So that is what we are going to look. So how to move from this factor cost to market price, sir. So that is the learning part over here. So I have already defined what is factor cost. It is essentially nothing but what are the costs involved for the firm. Already we said, for land it will be rent, for labor it will be wage, for capital it will be interest, and for entrepreneurship it will be profits. So these are the 4 important things. Okay, so these are the 4 important factor cost. So factor cost essentially implies what? Factor cost essentially implies what is the cost involved in production just at the factory gate, that is inside the factory. You are not putting anything. Factor cost implies just at the factory gate, inside the factory, what is the cost involved, just using the basic factors of production. But one market price means what? From my factory, I am taking the good to market, sir. Once I cross the factory gate, 2 things will happen. Okay, what will that be? They will impose a tax, GST. If government want to promote my good, they will give me subsidy. Let's take the example of subsidy, sir. Let's take the example of fertilizer, sir. Fertilizer is being produced in a factory using land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So I am paying out, my rent, wage, interest, and profit. So all those things are deducted. I finally calculated the price for the fertilizer. The fertilizer is coming out of the factory. First what will happen? They will impose a GST, which is nothing but indirect tax. Indirect tax, I will say what is it? During the public finance cost. As of now, take or a tax, you can also say. Tax or an indirect tax. GST is an indirect tax, that will be explained later. So I'm just imposing a tax. Okay. Plus on top of that, for farmers to get benefited, what am I doing? I am giving a subsidy. That means on this factor cost, to achieve the market price, since I'm imposing a tax from factor cost to market price, I just have to add the tax because I'm imposing. But on the whole, what am I saying? So that means I'm saying that for this product to move outside, you have to pay me this much tax. So that means the cost is increasing. Next to what I'm saying, it's okay, the farmer has to get benefited. So I will give you, as a government, I will give you some amount. So that is my subsidy. So that means I am giving, so that means I have to subtract, sir. So if I do this, then I come to market price. So this, is called as net indirect tax. Okay, so essentially what GST is also called as indirect tax, and essentially since you are imposing, it is also called as product tax. So you are putting a product tax, and then you are giving a product subsidy. So you're just subtracting. That is called as net. You are again doing net. So you're deducting the subsidy from the product tax. So that's all. Factor cost plus net indirect tax will move to market price, sir. So a simple example is, if they have given you GDP at factor cost, so how will you move to market price? If they ask a question, that means all I have to say is, I will be adding my tax, product tax, and I will be removing my product subsidy, sir. So when I do that, I will get GDP at market price, sir. So this is the understanding. So once you get this visualization, how to move between your formulas will become easier. So obviously next thing, with all the seed laid out, we are going to move into the next topic of GDP and national income. So yeah, till now we have looked at the basics part. First we looked at the circular flow of income, then we looked at national income / GDP. Till now we have not differentiated. Then we also have looked at the formula part. What is the difference between domestic, national, etc. Finally, we are making a formal entry into the syllabus. You will understand you will understand the efforts which you have taken now, because your understanding over here, understanding of GDP, etc., will become much easier. Okay, so we'll start with the GDP, and now we'll be doing a proper post-mortem analysis of 3 methods to calculate GDP. In depth we'll cover. So all those things what you have been waiting for has come. So first thing, sir, we are now going to cover GDP. What is GDP, sir? To simply put, it is gross domestic product. Okay, so already you know the definition for gross, already you know the definition for domestic, already you know the definition for product. So essentially if you just decode it, okay, you will get the definition. Nothing but ulnatu urpatti. So, okay, but still anyway we have to cover the formal definition. So I'm just going to say it is nothing but the market value of, sir, final goods and services produced within a geographic boundary and for a given time period. Time period over is nothing but a financial year. Financial year is nothing but what will start at April 1st and end at March 31st. So within this period, what are the, I'm just going to calculate the market value, price into quantity of all the goods, final goods. Okay, price final and quantity final. I'm just going to look at the final goods and quantities at market value within my country, sir. So this is within my country boundary. So as long as all these things are summation, you do summation of all that, you will be getting the GDP, which is essentially GDP, right? Gross domestic product. Domestic means within nation, gross means you are not deducting anything, product means production. So whatever, they just expanded. So whatever I have underlined, these are the keywords. So in case they ask whether this thing will come in GDP or not, you have to apply these things, and yes, to simply put, if they are saying final good, that means yes, this will be part of GDP. But if they are saying intermediate good, that means no, sir. A simple example would be a car tire. If I am going to a shop and purchasing the car tire, it will be there in my GDP, sir. But a manufacturer, like a car manufacturer purchasing car tire from MRF, for example, let's take example Maruti purchasing it from MRF, that will not be included in GDP, sir. Rather, the price of the car will be included, like, okay, because that is an intermediate product for production of car. But as a consumer, I will be paying for the whole car. So what will happen if I see, what will happen if I include that manufacturer purchasing? There will be double counting, sir. A simple example, like let's say MRF is giving to Maruti. And I am purchasing individual, okay. So this is how it is going. So what will happen? So if I'm going to calculate, so essentially the tire cost, so car cost includes the tire also. So this will be the total cost. But if I include this tire cost, what will happen? There will be double counting. So essentially for car 50,000, that includes tire also, plus I will be saying 5,000 for tire. That means what? I am overestimating the GDP, sir. So that is why intermediary goods should be neglected. So next, third important thing, imputed goods and services. Imputed goods and services are those goods and services for which you cannot attach a value, sir. A simple example would be your mother giving you daily tiffin, food she is preparing. Are you paying her anything? No. So those are imputed. They should be included in GDP. GDP provides for all those goods and services finally which is being consumed. Since it's practically not able, like you will not be able to fix a price on that. That will not be counted in GDP, sir. A simple example is our lecturers also. Our lecture is free, but essentially that there is a value attached to this lecture. There is a market price for this lecture. As an initiative, it is taken as free. So that means since it is adding value, it should be counted in GDP, but since we will not have the data, in practical purpose, we will leave that, sir. So in case if they ask the question, yes, imputed will be included in GDP, theoretically. Next thing, what will not be included, let's see. Capital gains. Capital gains means, again we'll go for example before understanding the term. I brought a land in Nagar, okay, that is 10 years back. So from 1 crore, now it went to 2 crores. So that means today I'm selling it for 2 crores. I'm getting 1 crore surplus. So this year I got 1 crore surplus. Should that be included in GDP or not? That is a question, sir. So to answer that question, we'll see the definition. It is goods and services produced in the time period. So that means, was that land produced in this time period? No, that means I will not add that in GDP. For example, if a flat was constructed and that was sold, so like that flat was constructed this year in Nagar and it was sold, that will be included, sir. So that means you need to see. So all those capital gains of the existing asset I brought and the price has appreciated and I sold that, the difference is capital gains, okay. That will not be counted in GDP. So that should be noted. So next important thing is second-hand sales. Like I bought a car for 1 lakh, okay, 5 lakhs, okay, 1 lakh Nano is not available anymore. Okay, so I bought a car for 5 lakhs. I sold now after 1 year, I sold it for 2 lakhs. So essentially I'm selling, so that 2 lakhs I'm getting right income. So will that be included? No. It is similar to capital gains, no? This car was produced 2 years before. So that 2 years before it was already counted in that GDP. We will not be counting it now, all those second-hand sales, sir. But in case if that second-hand sales involves some servicing, like for example that car is repaired. So like car has some repair and all. So before selling, what am I doing? I'm going to give it to service shop. That services will be done. Like for example, like there is a True Value in Maruti, etc. There are a lot of second-hand car selling agencies. Their services will be added into GDP. As such, the price of the car will not be added, sir. So second-hand car sales and etc. will not be added. So this is the what should be added and what should not be added in GDP. Next topic we are going to cover is GDP significance for GDP users. One should always, before going into this topic, in essence I am saying UPSC preparation, you need to know to reuse those topics. We have already covered NIS significance, like national income accounting significance, users, etc. Like the government perspective, the business perspective, the international perspective, we already looked at. Essentially you are going to paraphrase the same thing here. That is the significance, that is the users, that is applications of GDP, etc. So for all those things you can refer that slide. Next, finally, we are coming to the three methods of GDP calculation. We have already sown the seeds for this in the circular flow of income. We have seen how different agencies of economies are interacting to give that three things. So finally, we'll be concluding that here, sir. First thing, expenditure. What did I say? When expenditure comes means, I already said that expenditure means demand, sir. We have already looked at expenditure. So what did I say? These are all expenditures. They are spending. So expenditure is demand side of the economy you are focusing, sir. So this is the expenditure and I am focusing the demand side. So essentially what did I say? If I have to calculate the GDP at the expenditure method, I have to sum all these things. Let's go and see the formula on the side. Essentially whatever we have said, we have done in circular flow of income, we have did that only. Consumption, next we have added investment, next we have added government expenditure. Exports means it will bring money to the economy. Imports means it will take money from the economy. Essentially you are paying for some other person outside the country who has produced the goods. So that is all. So C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, this X minus M is also called as net exports. Already you know net means deduction, so net exports. So this term also sometimes will be used. So in case if that term comes, you should not be confused, sir. So with that, now what we will be doing is, what did I mean by post-mortem analysis is, this expenditure method is kind of important. So we'll be analyzing each parameter, like what is consumption and what is its significance, importance, etc. What is investment and its significance, and government expenditure significance, export, import. Each parameter will be dealt in detail. Okay, so that is what we are going to do now. So first we'll start with consumption, sir. See, consumption is the driver of GDP in India, sir. Why? Because 60% of India's GDP is nothing but consumption. So that is why it is called as driver of GDP in India. So that is why India is also called as consumption driven economy. C means consumption. Okay, that is why India is called as consumption driven economy. Whereas China is called as export driven. That means its GDP increase is majorly coming because of exports. So we'll be looking at which is better when we look at exports. We'll come to that part. So I'm just giving the difference right now. So is there any other trend, sir? Trend means there is recently, already you might have noted down, like 2019 and all, there was a consumer expenditure survey which said that basically consumption has started declining. So in fact, if you look at the thing, before COVID itself, 2019, we already started seeing a slowdown. Even you, in case if you are aware, you have read the news, you might have seen that automobiles are not selling, etc. Those kind of news already they started coming, which clearly signal that consumption is slowing down, sir. So that is the trend we need to know. So even before COVID itself, consumption started declining. So the reason they have been providing in the economic survey for that is, it is very simple. They are saying that investment has been declining from 2011. Okay, from 2011 itself, investment has been declining. So the impact of that is the GDP means income, right? Essentially all the people earning. So GDP started declining after like 2016-17, GDP growth rate. The impact of that is, obviously GDP crudely translates to national income visa. So when my income decreases, automatically what happens? My consumption decreases. This essentially, further fuels a slowdown. This is like 2011 it started, 2016-17 is this thing, this is 2019, 18-19. Okay, so this is also called as laggard effect. Okay, so basically because of that lagging, since we didn't arrest that investment decline then and there, it created a laggard effect. Okay. So next we will be looking at investment, sir. First we have covered consumption. Next, investment is, to understand investment, just to give an introduction, investment is the, prime driver of growth, as this has been mentioned in the economic survey, 2018-19, like private investment is the key for virtuous growth and all. So just to give an intro to, emphasize on investment. Now, before going into investment definition, we need to understand what is capital goods. We already saw capital. Capital is nothing but, capital and capital goods are one and the same. And what does that mean? That means that, those goods which are needed to produce something new. A simple thing would be machinery. Like A machinery, like for example, in an automobile industry, they will have some robots and etc. Those machinery is needed to produce your cars, sir. So those machinery are your capital goods. So to put it simply, they are used to, like, goods or machinery used to produce consumer goods. That is called as capital. Consumer goods means what? That will be directly consumed by us. Like for example, car is a consumer good. Similarly, all the foods we are after processing are getting, that is a consumer good. So capital, you get it right. Capital is all those goods which will be used for production. So essentially that means what? If you're increasing capital means you're increasing the productive capacity. Now with this understanding, we'll go into investment. What is investment, sir? Investment is nothing but your change or addition to capital goods. Okay, so it is nothing but change or addition to capital goods. That is why I've written as investment equal to delta K. Delta means change. In mathematics, whenever they use formula, delta means change, which is nothing but K, capital of 2021 minus capital of 2020. So what is the difference? That is the investment exactly happened. Okay. Another important thing we need to look at is, what are the types of capital? Capital can be physical capital and financial capital. Physical capital is nothing but your machinery, etc. Financial capital is nothing but, your investment you are getting from shares, stocks and credit, etc. So all those aspects is financial capital. So these are with respect to investment and capital. And as I said in the intro, as I said in the introduction itself, economic survey has said that private investment is the key for virtuous growth and $5 trillion economy, sir. So we are going to see how investment plays such a crucial role. Okay, so we already saw investment increases the productive capacity. That means what? If I do investment, essentially my machinery and etc. are increasing. So automatically if I bring in new machines, etc., obviously I will need what? Men to operate. So that means automatically my employment, I always write it by N. So my employment will start increasing, sir. Employment increase means their income and etc. will increase. Not only that, the goods produced will also increase. So essentially what? My GDP growth rate I always write as C. So essentially what? For future, all my GDP growth rate will increase, sir. So not only that, when you're producing more, what will happen? You will become more efficient. Okay, like producing, simple example is producing Rolls-Royce and the Hyundai factory in Chennai. Rolls-Royce is everything is handmade, hand assembled. The cost is so high. But a Hyundai car compared to that is very, very less because everything is automated and the mass they are making in mass. The assembly line production they will which will bring per unit cost very, very less. So essentially what will happen? So when you are increasing the production, your per unit cost will become less. This is called as economies of scale. This term you need to know, economies of scale. In case anywhere if you want to use it or if you come across newspaper, you need to have the understanding. So this is what is economies of scale. So essentially when economies of scale, per unit cost decrease, automatically what? Your goods will become attractive. Your export will increase, sir. This export will further fuel what? Will fuel growth, will fuel employment, etc. And all those things will what? This growth and employment. So once a producer knows that my demand has increased, my consumption has increased and etc. Consumption for my goods has increased, what will do? He will again increase further investment. So this kind of upward spiral, sir. So I inject money in investment, so I'm seeing impact, then again investment increases, I'm seeing the impact, investment increases. This upward spiral is called as virtuous cycle, and this will take me to the $5 trillion economy, sir. This is the idea suggested by economic survey. Okay. Next. Finally, we understood, investment as a concept. Now, in an accounting parlance, you need to know that what are all the elements of investment, what are all included in investment, sir. So that need to know. So before that, you need to know another term which is essentially used to refer investment, which is nothing but gross capital formation. I don't have to explain gross capital formation now. You already know the meaning. Gross means without any deduction. Capital formation means how much additional capital is forming. I already said that is called as investment. So essentially they are saying investment, another term is gross capital formation. So whenever you are seeing this technical term, don't get afraid, rather break it down and understand. So on the whole, investment is called as gross capital formation. And what are the subparts or what are the composition of the investment? That is what we are going to see. First thing if you start is, investment. The major component of investment is gross fixed capital formation. So gross fixed capital formation are those, unmovable or sunk or, set up things, like it can be, machinery, equipments, etc. Once set up, it's fixed over there, or it can be, construction, all those things. So those comes under gross fixed capital formation, and among investment, this is the main parameter which gives maximum growth, and even weightage also, it is around 90% of gross capital formation. So other two are less important. So that's why I'm saying all those terms is, sometimes in Hindu editorial you will be seeing GCF, gross capital formation, and GFCF, gross fixed capital formation. So whenever you see this term, you just equate it to investment. So to have a better understanding, sir. So next important thing is, apart from that, what are the other thing? Next thing is change in stock or inventory. That means, whatever I have produced earlier, I will be having some stock, no? That will also come as my investment, because I've invested. My sales will happen this year, but I have produced last year. Those will come under investment. Okay, the last thing is household. They generally invest in what? Gold. Gold is called as bullion. So all those are also investments, sir. So these are three types of investment, and I have already said in Lagarde effect from 2011, the trend also you need to know, because UPSC is now asking trends. So from 2011, my investment is decreasing. So there's a secular decline in investment as a percentage of GDP, and we have also seen the Lagarde effect. So I just have reiterated it over here. Next important topic, we are just taking a detour. Since we have covered investment, we will be looking at this related topic of incremental capital output ratio, or ICAR, before going into your government, exports, imports, etc. So again, any term we'll always break it down and understand. What did I have said? Like incremental capital output ratio. Clearly see this capital output ratio. That means what? Capital by output. So we are essentially saying capital by output, sir. Output already, output or GDP are one and the same, and I always write that by Y. So capital by output, sir. What did I say? Incremental. That means what? How much increment capital will give how much increment in output. So that means what? Change in capital and change in output. So this is what this term is saying. Essentially, the formal definition now comes out to be, amount of extra capital needed to produce one additional unit of output. So, and again, you need to know one more thing. So that is the definition. And again, in economics, it will always be, mostly it will be input by output rather than saying output by input. General terms, we will be focusing more on output, saying for this much output, this much input rate. But in economics, we will be focusing on input by output. So here, input is your capital, output is your GDP. This is not needed. I'm just saying. Okay, so now having the understanding of incremental capital output ratio, let's see, where is it useful. Okay, so before going to that, just this is a fact. Now, according to latest estimate, the value is 4.3. Okay, that means what? To produce 1 unit of output, I need to give 4 units of capital. Okay, so that means what? If my GDP was to grow by 1%, one sec. There's a technical glitch. Okay, so if my GDP was to grow by 1%, I need to increase my capital by 4%, sir. So that is what. So with this definition itself, you must have guessed the significance. What is the significance or the uses of ICAR? It essentially helps us find us the investment rate given the target growth rate. Let me explain what that statement means. Okay, so let's say now our country is targeting 7% growth rate, sir. That means how much investment is needed to get that 7% growth rate that we can get by ICAR. ICAR, I already said, this is nothing but delta K by delta Y. So we already saw what is delta K. I is equal to delta K. Delta K is change in capital output. So change in capital goods. Change in capital goods is nothing but I. And similarly, what? Delta Y means what? Change in output, like change in GDP. That is GDP 2021 minus GDP 2020. So that means clearly it is saying what? It is referring to my growth rate. So this is nothing but equal to ICAR, sir. So now I have given a definition for ICAR. So that means what will happen? So if this G has to come here, obviously this G has to come to this side, left hand side. You will be knowing your mathematics. So it will be what? ICAR into G, sir. That will be equal to your investment. Okay, so that means what? Once I know my ICAR, once I know the targeted growth rate, I can find the investment needed, what the investment government needed. So that is what I have written here. Essentially, now I know that 4%, 4 is my ICAR, and the government is targeting what? 7% growth rate. Okay, so essentially that means what? The government, for to get this 7% growth rate, the government should do investment of 28%. Only when I do 28%, I can get to 7% growth rate. So this is also called as Harrod-Domer model. Actually, in fact, in the first 5-year plan, this was the strategy to help India grow, sir. That means what did Harrod-Domer model suggested? Harrod said that increase the saving and convert that saving into investment, that will lead to growth. So that investment to growth happens through ICAR, incremental capital output ratio. This Harrod-Domer model was put in place for the first 5-year plans. So we will be looking that in detail in 5-year plans, and I'm just giving a seed over here. Okay, so we have seen the first significance. It helps us find the investment rate. Second significance is nothing but efficiency, sir. So how is ICAR a measure of efficiency? See, I am saying, what am I saying? ICAR essentially says that, how much for how much output, how much input is needed, it is saying, sir. So that means what? Essentially, for how much output, how much input is needed. So essentially what saying, how much input is converted into output, that is what it is saying. So that means what? If my ICAR, let's say my ICAR is 5, that means 5 units of inputs are needed to produce 1 units of output. If my ICAR is 4 units are needed to produce 1 unit output. So which is efficient? With less input, I am producing the same output. That means lesser the value, higher is the efficiency, sir. More is the value, less is the efficiency. So that's how ICAR is a parameter of efficiency, sir. So now understanding the ICAR's significance and all, and its relation with investment. Obviously, after understanding everything, what we'll look at, we'll be looking at significance, application, etc. So that is what we are going to look at. So essentially, ICAR, what does it depend on? So in case this is like a mains part, but it can also be used in prelims. Like we'll be looking at what is ICAR dependent on. Why? Because let's say if India has to grow faster, one of the aspects is to increase the investment, or another aspect is decrease the ICAR and make India more efficient. Okay, so that means you need to know what is ICAR. So one parameter you can target investment, other is you don't know how to decrease the ICAR. That means you need to, before knowing that how to decrease ICAR, you should know what ICAR is dependent on, sir. Only when you know what ICAR is dependent on, you can target those parameters to decrease it. So we'll be looking at, so this will be, if mains parameter, you will be, mains aspect, you will be looking on all those parameters which ICAR depends on, and how to change those parameters to change ICAR. That will be mains parameters. Prelims, there will be a simple question, what ICAR is dependent on. So all those things you need to here, then and there, apply and find out, sir. So first thing is ICAR. So first thing is ICAR dependence. We'll be looking at what is it dependent on. So first dependence is industry, sir. So let me have a water break just. Okay, my mouth became dry, sorry. So first thing is choice of industry. Okay, so how industry and ICAR are linked? Let's take an example as usual. Say let's take like a very basic industry or heavy goods industry like iron and steel. To produce iron and steel, what will happen? You need to acquire so much land, you need to bring in electricity, you need to bring in coal, you need to bring in charcoal, you need to bring in iron ore. And for that you need to furnace to heat. Like you see, right, the amount needed. Essentially, if it's a heavy good or a capital good industry, that means it will have high ICAR, sir. That means it needs a lot of investment even before producing output. Rather, if you look at very simple industry like textile, all it needs is yarn and some labor to produce it. And similar thing, tourist means all you need a tourist guide and little bit to explain, automatically tourism industry. So all these types of industries generally it does not require that much input. They can provide growth faster. So that means in case if India wants to grow in the short period, the focus should be on all those industries which require very less investment, sir. So that is what I said. So industry will have a role to play on ICAR. So heavy industry, this thing, consumer industry, less ICAR. This is in general. Next important thing is technology, sir. So technology means what? For any production, I will use a technology, and technology will determine how much input is used efficiently without any wastage. If my technology is efficient, that means my less wastage, all my input is getting used, that means lower ICAR. If my technology is very old, inefficient technology, that means high ICAR. So that is how technology and ICAR are dependent. Next, we will be looking at excess capacity utilization. This has to be explained. This relation between this and ICAR has to be explained through an example. Let's take, I have set up a industry. Okay, so in this industry I have 10 machines to produce 10 output. But what am I doing? I've set up 10 industries. Okay, 10 I've set up 10 machines. Okay, and drawing 10 will be difficult, so I have set up 5 machines, and through this I'm going to produce 5 output. Okay, so through this I'm going to produce 5, supposed to produce 5 output. But what am I doing? Because of change in demand and etc., I'm just producing, for other reasons, I'm just producing only 2 outputs, sir. So that means what? I've made investment for 5 but only producing 2 output. That means what? My ICAR is increasing. I am not using all my capacity efficiently. There is some excess capacity. Okay, so that means what? When there is a excess capacity, ICAR will be higher. When you utilize those excess capacity, that is increasing the excess capacity utilization, when you utilize those excess capacity, your ICAR will decrease. The last part, we all know this thing. Any highway project, any roadway project, any flyover project, they will start at one time, they will quote one cost. What will happen? The government will change. For 5 years, that project will lie idle. Then the next government, when it comes to start the project, what will happen? There will be a very big cost hike and override because of the delay. So essentially, if such delays happen, what will happen, sir? Eventually ICAR will increase because efficiency is decreasing and inefficiency is increasing, sir. So that is what your corruption, red tapeism and delay, all this will lead to time and cost overruns, eventually increasing the ICAR, sir. So these are all factors on which ICAR depends on. So our detour has finished. Now we will again be moving into expenditure model, like we'll be covering the government